Question 1 asks us to write the repeating decimal as a fraction. When we only have one digit that's repeating, we just need 9 as the denominator. So 0.7 repeating would become 7 out of 9. 0.23 repeating has 2 digits that repeat, so I need 2 9s on the bottom, and my numerator will be 23. If I have 3 digits that are repeating, I need a 9 for each of them. So 441 repeating would be 441 out of 999. For question number 2, they ask you to multiply or divide by moving the decimal point the correct number of places left or right. If they give me a repeating decimal and they ask me to multiply by 10, I need to move the decimal one place to the right. So I'll take my decimal and I'll move it over one place. This will give me 254.4, and then all of the decimals after that would be 4. So we just put a repeating sign after the decimal. If I have 0.341 and just the 4 and 1 are repeating, and I need to divide by 10, I have to start by moving the decimal one place to the left. So I take my decimal and I move it over. When I'm rewriting my decimal, it will be 0.0341, but notice it's still only the 4-1 that is repeating, so I don't have the repeating sign over the first 2 digits. If we remember from our lesson yesterday, 1 over 9 is the same thing as 0.1 repeating, or 0.11111, and then I can put some ellipses after it to show that it's going to continue going. Now, I have to look at 1 divided by 90. Is going to be 0.011111, and the ones will keep repeating. Now, this might seem a little bit confusing, so I'll break it down. It's kind of like having 1 over 9 times 10, right? And so we could break this down into the same thing as doing 1 over 9 and then dividing this whole thing by 10, because when you multiply by 1/10, it's the same thing as dividing by 10. So if we had 0.1 repeating and we divided it by 10, we'd move our decimal over one place, which would give us 0.01 repeating. So if there's a 0 here, we just need to add an extra blank space before the repeating digits. The first number won't actually be repeating. Question 4 asks us if 137 out of 999 is the same thing as 0.137 repeating, what would 137 out of 9,990 be? The first thing I have to think about is how many places do I need after the decimal? I would need 4 digits because there's also 4 digits in my denominator. Then the 9s tell me how many of those numbers are repeating. There's 3 9s, so it would be the 3 last digits because you can't have a repeating decimal that comes before a non-repeating. The repeating decimals always have to be at the end. Then I'm going to fill this in. So I go from the end, 731, and then to give the placeholder, I put in a 0. So this would become 0.0137 with the 137 repeating. 5a asks us to solve 13 times 0.01. So it gives us 0.13. Then they're going to ask us to find 13 times 0.011, and we will get the answer 0.143. We can also use our calculator to find 13 times 0.0111, which gives us 0.1443. Now, question B asks us to use this pattern to predict 13 times 0.0111 going on infinitely. So we'd have 0.14, and it looks like the 4 is going to keep repeating, and then maybe we'd get a 3 at the end. But we know that we can't actually have an unrepeating decimal afterwards. So we're actually just going to get rid of this 3 at the end, because just like when we did 0.9 repeating, the 9s will keep going. So every time we add another 1, each of these 3s will turn into a 4 and keep going on forever. So it would actually be the same as 0.14 with the 4 repeating. Question C asks, why should 13 divided by 90 give us the same answer that we have in part B? Basically, how are these the same type of question? So we know that 1/9 is the same thing as 0.1 repeating, right? And so that means that 1 out of 90, we would need 2 places after the decimal, but only the last one's repeating. So it would be like 0.1 repeating, which is the same thing as our multiplication question here. This is essentially like the same question, and we can use our calculator to check. So in our calculator, if we put 13 divided by 90, we would get 0.14 with the 4 repeating, which is the same answer we got for question B. For question D, they ask us to use the fact that 13 out of 9 is the same thing as 1 and 4/9 to find 13 out of 90 in a different way. So if we know 1 and 4/9, 4/9 is the same thing as 0.4 repeating. So if we added 1 plus 0.4 repeating, we would get 1.4 repeating. Now, this would be for 13 out of 9. To move to 90, it would be like dividing this whole thing by 10. So if we were to move the decimal place over 1, we would get 0.14 with the 4 repeating. Question 6 asks us to write each decimal as a fraction. So we're going to start with 0.1 repeating, 0.8 repeating, and 0.08 repeating. So 0.1 repeating gives us 1 out of 9. 0.8 repeating is 8 out of 9. And 0.08 repeating is 8 out of 90. And we get the 9 because there's one place that's repeating, and the 0 because there's one place that's not repeating. Now they're going to give us some blanks. So they're getting us to use this information to look at the fact that 0.58 with the 8 repeating is like 0.5 plus 0.08 repeating. They're breaking apart each digit for place value. Now we need to turn each of these into a fraction. So what fraction is 0.5? It is 1/2. Then we have to remember what's 0.08 repeating as a fraction. So just like it says up here, it is 8 out of 90. Now we need to add these fractions together, but in order to do that, we need to have the same bottom number. I can't bring 8 out of 90 down to 2, but I can give them a common denominator. To find our lowest common denominator, we have to find something called the lowest common multiple. And to do this, we have to look at multiples of 2 and multiples of 90 to find the first one that's in common. Now, our lowest possible answer is 90. Is 2 a multiple of 90? Yes. Or if 2 is a factor of 90. So we could make these both fractions out of 90, which means 8 out of 90 will not change, but to get from 1/2 to 90, I will need to multiply by 45, which will give me 45 out of 90. Now I'm going to add these together. So when I add, the denominator stays the same because that's just telling me the size of the piece. And then I add together the numerator. So 45 plus 8 is 53. So my answer to this would be 53 out of 90 as a fraction. I'm also going to go through 6G just because it's a little bit longer and doesn't break it down for you. So if we have 2.35 repeating, we need to break this apart into decimals. So the 2 is going to become a whole number 2. The 0.35 repeating is going to be like 0.35 repeating. Now I need to turn each of these into a fraction. So 2 as a fraction is 2. 0.35 repeating as a fraction is 35 over 99. Now in order to add these, I need a common denominator. So this 2 is the same thing as 2 out of 1. So I can't make them both out of 1, but I can make them both out of 99. So if I multiply this by 99, I will get 99 on the bottom and 198 on the top. Then I can add my 35 out of 99, which will give me 233 out of 99. Now, remembering that we can just leave it here instead of breaking it down anymore. So they're finding your answer key with just 233 out of 99.